guys, and welcome to day 4 in my countdown to The Walking Dead. We are getting so close. It's kind of crazy. Before I start this video, I just wanted to say thank you to those of you who are watching these videos and giving some feedback or voting in my polls and Twitter as the countdown, whatever it is. I just want to say thank you because, I mean, these videos were a bit of work. I really wanted to do them, but it's nice to see that some people are appreciating them and enjoying them. So I'm just going to start by saying thank you. The second thing that I'm going to say is when I decided to do this particular video, I thought it was going to be a lot easier than it was. I thought top 10 villains. Who doesn't, you know, that's a great kind of video and everybody can have input in the comment section and whatnot. And then I started to make the list and realized how many like morally ambiguous characters we have on this show that I do not know if I should classify them as a villain or not. Like, there's a lot. Like, you could make a case that Rick could go on this list. I'm not going to make that case, but one could do that. So it actually turned out to be a little more complicated. This was going to be one of the videos that I thought was going to be a little easier, and it wasn't. So if you disagree with anybody on my list and are like, they're not really a villain, or this person definitely should have been on, you know, for example, I'm going to talk about somebody who did not make the list, but potentially could, and that was Lizzie. I thought about her and I said, you know, she didn't really do the best of things, but she also was a sick child, but where's the line? There's so many characters that it's so blurry for. So I apologize in advance if you don't agree with my definition of what a villain is, but I tried to stick to people who were almost clearly antagonists for the majority of their run of the show, if that makes sense. Okay, let's just get into it. Number 10 on the list of best villains of The Walking Dead, who I'm not the biggest fan of, but is Dawn from the hospital group. She was definitely a villain, and she was definitely an interesting character in the sense that she was so delusional with what she was doing there. You know, I think she deep down convinced herself that she was saving people and helping people. And it was kind of weird to see her. I didn't particularly like her as a character. And I know it sounds weird to say, like, you know, you didn't particularly like somebody who was a antagonist of the show. But, you know, I love villains. Like, a lot of times my favorite characters in shows are villains. And she just didn't seem all that likable to me at all. But I did think she was an interesting character, and a character that they, you know, that kind of showed what can happen when, you know, a certain amount of delusion gets into a power position. It was really interesting. So that's why she made the list. Number 9 on the list might be a little weird for some of you guys, but it is Martin, the termite that was in that little shack with Tyrese, and he made an appearance again in Tyrese's vision before he died. I liked Martin. He wasn't a good character, and he threatened to snap Judith's neck, and you know, so that's not fun. But there was something about him that I think he kind of accepted who he was and accepted his fate. And I loved the conversation that he and Tyrese had in that in the premiere, where, you know, if he's kind of the mirror image of Tyrese, and the guy who is willing to do anything. He's willing to snap a baby's neck. He's willing to eat people. He's willing to do all of this stuff. And, you know, him saying, you know, if you're not prepared to do anything like that, then you're going to be the one who dies today. I thought that that was really kind of a very interesting take to put a character like this against a character like Tyrese and kind of see the dynamic between the two. So I actually really liked Martin, even though he was in like barely any episodes. Number 8 on the list is somebody we don't like at all, but I gotta think, if I have such hatred for him, that the character is doing his damn job, and that is Dwight. Dwight, to me, I love him in the comics. He's horrible and really snake-like, and I'm definitely love him a lot more in the comics than in the show at this point. But I had to stick him on this list because he really does invoke a certain amount of anger in fans. You know, Daryl helped him out. He stole his crossbow. He shot Daryl. There's a whole lot, and I like the dynamic that they're doing between him and Daryl, that hopefully it's Daryl who kills him in the end. If anybody gets to kill him, I hope they kind of go with the same sort of character arc that they do in the comics, but we'll see how it all turns out. Some things don't really happen in the same way in the show. So I'm very interested to see the dynamic with that. I can't say that he has a ton at the moment that's very likable about him, but this show, time and time again, has made a character that you hate or just don't care about that much and made you like him or her. So I'm kind of hoping that will happen here as well. Speaking of the show making turnarounds with characters, number 7 on this list is the alpha wolf of the wolves. I didn't care too much about the wolf. I thought it was kind of interesting how they were trying to do, you know, the Morgan storyline with trying to save him, and I was nervous that he was going to get out anyway, and like I thought he was going to kill Judith. Like, I don't know, I thought there was some foreshadowing with that. And then in the last No Way Out, I swear I felt bad when he died. I was like, oh no, oh my God, he was gonna change. He could possibly change, and Denise was helping him, and oh my God. You know, I mean, to be fair, out of all the people who could have died in No Way Out, I was okay with it, but there was a little part of me that was like, oh God, now I kind of liked him. And I like that the show can do that with a lot of characters. Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that they took a character that I thought really overstayed his welcome before starting No Way Out and actually making him very interesting within that episode. Number 6 on the list is going to be Gareth. Gareth is I don't even know where to even start with Gareth. I think the terrifying thing about Gareth is the terrifying thing about the cannibals in general. I don't really think maybe him as a character was the most threatening or terrifying, but the idea of them and the idea of how they got to the point where they wanted to actually eat people, I think was really interesting to see. And he had a little humor to him. He had a little, like, he really kind of looked like everything was so normal when they were slitting people's throats, and he was like, oh, okay, did you mark your person or whatever? And he's just like talking like they're ordering at Subway or something. And I thought that was kind of the scariest part of him, that he you know, made it seem so normal. And even, you know, when he's literally eating Bob's leg in front of Bob, he's like having a conversation with him, like, oh, what's going on, you know? You know, he's having a conversation about terrible things, but it was very casual. And I thought that was a really, that was kind of the creepiest thing about him. Number 5 on this list is Joe from the Claimers group. Okay, so why he made it so high on the list is I think he was one of the characters that, you know, maybe not as a whole as likable as others or anything like that, but he was kind of a more terrifying character, even though he had a short stint. He was a character that was really just, you know, taking what was his. You know, he was the prime example of, you know, what happens to a person when there are no rules anymore in society to keep them behind bars or keep them, you know. He had an admiration for Daryl when he first met him because he knew that he knew how to use a crossbow and was probably a hunter before the apocalypse. And I think he was just really terrifying. That scene at the end of season 4 where he, you know, was about to rape, or his group is about to rape Michonne, and then they're about to rape Carl, which that is a whole nother can of worms of ooh. And he was terrifying. And so that's why he actually made it a little higher on this list than other characters, because I thought that he was actually pretty scary. Also, I really love the actor. I've seen him in a lot of things. He normally plays a bad guy, and he's normally very good at it. So that's another kind of example of an actor bringing something to the role. Number 4 on this list is going to be one of those people that I was talking about earlier, being a little, you know, not really, but you can make an argument for both. I actually really like this character. This is probably one of my favorite characters of the show. And I think that I don't think he was a villain in the end, but I feel like more people consider him to be a villain, so he's on this list. Let me know what you think, but, and that is Merle. You know, when he was on that roof, he was an asshole, and then he joined the governor. And the thing that kind of put me over the edge of putting him on this list and naming him as a villain was basically him taking Glenn and Maggie and that whole kind of scenario with them. I mean, that was not very good in a lot of ways. So I have to say that he is definitely on this list. Now, out of every single person on this list, if you ask me who my favorite character is out of that, I would say Merle, because I really like Merle. But villain-wise, I'm putting others higher because they had more of an impact on the show. They were more of a bigger antagonist. They did more in a horrific way. Yeah, Merle was kind of tough to figure out if he should be on the list or not. But I mean, for the majority of the show, he was more of an antagonist than a protagonist, even if he had moments that made him very likable. So he's number 4 on the list. Number 3 on the list is actually the governor. I will say, in the sense of being the biggest bad guy, he is kind of reigning champ at the moment. You know, kind of being the antagonist the longest, doing kind of the most horrific things, and he was such a great character and such a great bad guy. And I think he, throughout his run, kind of did something to almost every single person in Rick's group. Like, a lot of people had a personal connection of why they wanted to kill the governor. And it kind of became this sort of running joke, if you remember, leading up to the episode where he did actually die, where people were like, how is he going to, who's going to kill him? How's he going to go, and who is going to do it? Everybody, I was of the mind that Michonne probably she kind of found him out the longest and had kind of running issues with him for the longest. So that was, but him as a character, I thought he was really, really well done. I did like the governor in the comics a little bit more. I talked about that in my comic versus TV video that I did. But in general, I think that he was still such a force to be reckoned with in the show. He was terrifying in so many ways. The fact that he really, I feel like believed his own psychotic self, it was very terrifying. He did such a great job. His final act of killing Herschel before leaving the show it's a lasting impression for all of us, and of taking out one of the most likable characters of the show is, that's going to kind of set you apart, and you're going to go down as one of the best villains of the show thus far. Number 2 on the list is one of those, some of you probably maybe don't think that he's a villain, but to me, he definitely was the antagonist of season 2. I think one of the best written characters of the show. He's great, and that is Shane. Shane edges out the governor for me because I just think that he was a little more interesting and a little more complex. It was interesting to see the progression of how he got from kind of a member of the group that's a team player and cares about what's going on, to wanting to take out Rick and wanting to keep Lori and Carl, for himself, as if they didn't even have a choice in the matter. I loved the progression of it. I loved the episode where he kills Otis, and when he shaves his head, you can just see that there's something wrong. I believe that he really does go down in history as one of the best villains, even though you can make a case for him. That's the thing about this show. But I think that he is a brilliant character and a wonderful adversary to kind of get Rick over the edge, if you understand what I'm saying. Rick, really went over the edge after killing Shane. Shane was his best friend, and it was such a great catalyst of using Shane to get Rick into a specific place. So he's number 2 on the list. I know, guys. I know you guys are probably like, he was in one scene. And maybe I'm channeling a bit of the comic book, but number 1 on this list is Negan. I'm putting my faith in the writers, in the producers, and in Jeffrey Dean Morgan, that he is going to pull off Negan and be the best villain of all time. I don't think I could have put him anywhere else on this list. Let's be honest, his anticipation of him was enough. And if they follow suit with the comics, even slightly, they don't even have to fully follow suit with the comics, Negan's going to crush all of the villains past of The Walking Dead, and really get into kind of a more heartbreaking era of The Walking Dead. I think Negan's going to have quite a few wins before he gets any losses. And that's going to be very heartbreaking to see our heroes, if you want to call them that, because everybody's morally ambiguous in the show. Jesus Christ. Okay, so if you want to kind of, we're going to see people have to come up to the task to take him down, and it's just going to be amazing. I think he made quite an impression, whether or not you liked the cliffhanger or not. I think most people agree that Negan and Lucille Maybe she should have made this list, but made quite the impression in the finale. I couldn't not have him as number one, as weird as that may seem. So thank you guys so much for watching day 4 in the countdown to The Walking Dead. I am nervous about Sunday, but I kind of want to get it over with and cry my eyes out and have you guys comment on how I cry, because apparently whenever I cry in a reaction video, people really get into the nitty-gritty of how I cried. And it's quite interesting to be analyzed by your human emotions. It's quite weird, but I kind of want to get it over with. I'm excited but sad at the same time, because I'm pretty sure I'm saying goodbye to one of my favorites, and that's really sad. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.